Do you have an awful auntie? One that never allows you to stay up to watch your favourite television programme? Or an auntie makes you eat up every last spoonful of her revolting rhubarb crumble, even though she knows how you hate rhubarb? Maybe your aunt gives her pet poodle a big slobbering wet kiss and then immediately gives you a big slobbering wet kiss too? Or does your aunt scoff all the most delicious chocolates from the box, leaving you with just the dreaded black cherry liqueur? Perhaps your aunt demands you wear that horrendously itchy jumper she knitted for you at Christmas, the one which reads, "I love my auntie," in huge purple letters on the front. However awful your auntie might be, she will never be in the same league as awfulness as Aunt Alberta. Aunt Alberta was the most awful aunt who ever lived. Would you like to meet her? Yes, I thought you would. Good. Here she is in all her awfulness. Sharp black eyes, black hair with red streaks, a wicked looking bat, a permanent snarl on her face, steel toe cap boots. Are you sitting uncomfortably? Then I will begin. Meet the other characters. The young Lady Stella Saxby. This is Wagner, the great Bavarian bat. This is Gibbon, the ancient butler of Saxby Hall. At first, there were only colours, then lines. Slowly through the haze of Stella's gaze, the room eventually took shape. The little girl realised she was lying on her own bed. Her bedroom was just one of the countless in this vast country house. To her right side stood her wardrobe. On her left sat a tiny dressing table, framed by a tall window. Stella knew her bedroom as well as she knew her own face. Saxby Hall had always been her home, but somehow, at this moment, everything seemed strange. Outside there was not a sound. The house had never been this quiet before. All was silent. From her bed, Stella turned her head to look out of the window. All was white. Thick snow had fallen. It had covered everything within sight. The long sloping lawn, the huge deep lake, and the empty fields beyond the estate. Icicles hung from the branches of trees. Everything was frozen. The sun was nowhere to be seen. The sky was as pale as clay. It seemed to be not quite night, not quite day. Was it early morning or late evening? The little girl had no idea. Stella felt as if she had been asleep forever. Was it days, months, years? Her mouth was as dry as the desert. Her body felt heavy as stone, as still as a statue. For a moment the little girl thought she might still be asleep and dreaming she was awake in her bedroom. Stella had experienced that dream before, and it was frightening because, try as she might, she couldn't move. Was this the same nightmare again, or something more sinister? To test whether she was asleep and dreaming, the girl thought she would try to move. Starting at the far end of her body, first she tried to waggle her little toe. If she was awake and she thought about waggling her toe, it would just waggle, but try as she might, it wouldn't waggle, or wiggle, or even woggle. One by one she tried to move each toe on her left foot, then each toe on her right foot. One by one, they all point blank refused to do anything. Feeling increasingly panicked, she tried to circle her ankles. before attempting to stretch her legs, then to bend her knees. Finally, she concentrated as hard as she could on lifting her arms. All were impossible. It was as if she had been buried in sand from the neck down. Beyond her bedroom door, Stella heard a sound. The house dated back centuries. It had been passed through many generations of the Saxby family. It was so old that everything creaked, and so vast that every noise echoed down the endless labyrinth of corridors. Corridors. Sometimes the young Stella believed that the house was haunted, that a ghost stalked Saxby Hall in the dead of night. When she went to bed, the little girl was convinced she could hear someone or something moving about behind her wall. Sometimes she would even hear a voice calling to her. Terrified, she would dash into her mother and father's room and climb into bed with them. Her mother and father would hold Stella tight and tell her she was not to worry her pretty little head. All those strange noises were just the clatter of pipes and the creaking of floorboards. Stella was not sure. Her eyes darted over to the huge oak-panelled door of her bedroom. At waist height there was a keyhole, though she never locked the door and didn't even know where the key was. Most likely it had been lost 100 years ago by some great-great-grandparent. One of those Saxby lords or ladies whose paintings were hung every few paces along the corridors, captured forever, unsmiling in oils. The keyhole flickered light to dark. The little girl thought she saw the white of an eyeball staring at her through the keyhole, before quickly disappearing out of view. "Mama, is that you?" she cried out. Hearing her own voice out loud, Stella knew this was no dream. On the other side of the door, an eerie silence lingered. Stella plucked up the courage to speak again. "Who is it?" she pleaded. "Please." The floorboards creaked outside. Someone or something had been spying on her through the keyhole. The handle turned, and slowly the door was pushed open. The bedroom was dark, but the hallway was light, so at first all the girl could see was a silhouette. It was the outline of someone as wide as they were tall. Even though they were extremely wide, they still weren't particularly tall. The figure was wearing an orange belt and an orange bangle. She had black hair with an orange streak and ears and a tail. She had steel toe-cap boots on, and on her arm was the distinct outline of a bat. Named Wagner. Stella knew instantly who this person was. It was her awful aunt Alberta. You can Right, Chapter 5. Now that we've learned all about Alberta and her great Bavarian mountain bat, we can return to our story. Up in Stella's bedroom at the top of Saxby Hall, the little girl was laid out on her bed. A deep shadow loomed over her, the shadow of her Aunt Alberta, with her pet bat, Wagner, perched on her hand. Stella's voice cracked as she asked her aunt, "I don't understand. How can I have been asleep for months?" Alberta thought for a moment and took a live mouse out of her pocket by its tail before dropping it into Wagner's mouth. The bird wolfed the unfortunate creature whole. "Ever since the accident," replied the woman. "Accident? What accident?" Stella pleaded. Aunt Alberta approached the girl's bed and rested a hand on the blanket. "The accident that did this to you." With a theatrical flourish, the woman whipped the blanket off the bed. Stella looked down in horror to see that her entire body was bandaged up. It was as if she was an ancient Egyptian pharaoh mummified in a pyramid. Every bone in your body has been broken. No, cried the girl. Yes, replied Alberta, mocking her niece's tone. Each little bone was shattered into hundreds of pieces. You had to be scooped up like a piece of wibbly-wobbly jelly. How on... What happened? And where are Mama and Papa? Pleaded Stella. The little girl had so many questions, her words were tumbling out in desperation. Aunt Alberta merely smirked. She sucked on her pipe and blew some smoke into her niece's face. Oh, so many questions. All in good time, child. But I need to know, demanded Stella. Now! Alberta tutted. Perhaps you would like a game of tiddlywinks first? The girl couldn't believe what she was hearing. What are you talking about? The woman pulled a box off the girl's shelf and put it down on the bed. This isn't the time, said Stella. There's always time for tiddlywinks, replied Alberta, as she busied herself arranging all the pieces of the game. Might go first, she said excitedly, and she pushed down on her squidger to flip one of her winks into flight. It landed with a ping in the pot. Ping! 1,000,007 points to me. Your go. Stella stared at her aunt, her eyes bulging with fury. Oh no, silly me, I've forgotten. Both your arms are broken. Looks like I've won again. I never wanted to play. No one likes a bad loser, Stella. I need to know what has happened to my parents, shouted the girl. Alberta shook her head at her niece's behaviour. Now, if you can be quiet for just one moment, your auntie will tell you exactly what happened. She often spoke in this baby talk. It made Stella's skin crawl. You have no memory at all of the accident? No. Try as she might, Stella could not remember anything. She must have hit her head hard. But how? Please tell me. Oh dear. Oh dearie me. What? Tell me, I'm begging you. Hush, this instant, hissed the woman. The girl had no option but to fall silent. Now, Auntie can begin. It was as if she was telling a bedtime story. It was a rainy morning. You were sat in the back seat of your father's Rolls Royce. On your way into London, your father had another appointment with the bank manager, while your mother was going to take you to see Buckingham Palace, but alas, your jolly jaunt was not to be. Why, what happened? Perhaps your father had been drinking. He never drank, protested Stella. He must have been driving too fast. He never drove too fast. But Alberta was in full flow now, and there was absolutely no stopping her. The Rolls Royce was speeding along a coastal road. Your father lost control of the car on a sharp bend, and suddenly the woman paused for dramatic effect. It was as if she was enjoying being the bearer of bad news. What? It plunged over the side of a cliff. No! Stella screamed. Yes! Smashing onto the rocks below, Alberta said before adding her own sound effect. Smash! Boom!